The laughter at the dinner table died the second Dylan said my name. We were celebrating my parents' wedding anniversary, a night that was supposed to be filled with joy and family memories. Instead, the air turned ice cold as my brother stood up and pointed a shaking finger at me. "Ava didn't just betray me," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "She stole from me. She took the money I had saved for my business expansion." The room froze instantly. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall like a heartbeat. My mother's silver fork dropped onto her china plate with a sharp clatter that made me jump. My father, who was usually the first to defend me, went completely still. His face turned a shade of pale that I had never seen before. Then, the large TV in the dining room lit up. Dylan had prepared a presentation. It showed bank transfers, fake messages, and even a voice note that sounded exactly like mine, begging him for money. I felt every eye in the room burn into me like hot coals. And the worst part was Olivia, my closest friend, who leaned over and whispered, "I knew something was off about her lately." My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. My voice disappeared entirely because I understood the truth. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a total setup. I swallowed the pain and said quietly, "Let him finish." I didn't defend myself as the lies continued to pour out of his mouth. I sat there like a statue, watching my brother destroy my life in front of everyone we loved. I didn't say a word when my mother started crying, her head in her hands as she wondered where she went wrong with me. I didn't move when my father refused to look at me, his eyes fixed on the tablecloth as if he couldn't bear the sight of my face. Dylan kept talking, layering one lie on top of another. He made the story sound clean and perfectly believable, providing dates and reasons for why I would do something so terrible. He painted me as a greedy sister who was jealous of his success and willing to ruin him just to get ahead. But as I watched him, I noticed something small. His eyes kept checking my face every few seconds. He was looking for reaction. He was waiting for me to break down, scream, or cry so that he could use my emotions as further proof of my guilt. I didn't give him what he wanted. I stayed perfectly calm, and that silence started to unsettle him. He expected a fight, but I was busy observing every detail of his performance. By morning, I was no longer just Ava, the daughter and sister they had known for 24 years. I was branded overnight as the sister who stole. The news of my alleged crime traveled through our social circles faster than a wildfire. My phone was blown up with messages at first, but they weren't from friends asking if I was okay. They were notifications of people blocking me. My workplace called me before I even finished my first cup of coffee to tell me I was placed on an indefinite suspension. They said they couldn't have someone with my reputation handling their accounts while a family investigation was ongoing. My phone eventually filled with a heavy, suffocating silence. There were no calls from my cousins, no texts from my aunts, and absolutely no one defending me. It felt like I had been erased from the world I lived in. I realized then that the lie didn't just spread on its own through gossip. It was being pushed. Dylan was actively calling people and warning them about me, making sure that I was isolated and alone before I could even think of a way to fight back. He wanted me to have nowhere to turn. In the quiet of my apartment, I replayed the evidence Dylan had shown at dinner over and over in my head. I thought about the bank transfers and the messages that looked so real on the screen. Something felt wrong about the whole thing, but I couldn't put my finger on it at first. I sat at my computer and pulled up my actual bank statements, comparing them to the screenshots he had flashed in front of the family. Then I finally caught it. It was a tiny mistake, one that most people would never notice. The transaction alert format in his screenshots didn't match the specific layout my bank used for mobile notifications. The font was slightly off, and the spacing around the date was different by just a few pixels. I realized then that the evidence was completely fake. It was a very convincing fake, likely made with professional editing software, but it was a lie nonetheless. My heart hammered against my ribs as I looked at the screen. He had spent hours, maybe even days, creating these documents just to frame me. This wasn't a sudden outburst. It was a calculated attack on my character. Just when I thought I was truly alone, Claire Dawson reached out to me. Claire was a family acquaintance who worked in corporate investigations and had always been known for her sharp mind. She pulled me aside at a local coffee shop a few days after the dinner. "I've seen cases like this before, Ava," she said quietly, sliding a cup of tea toward me. She didn't look at me with pity or anger like everyone else did. She looked at me with curiosity. She told me that she had watched Dylan's presentation at the anniversary party and noticed that he seemed a little too prepared, like a salesman following a script. She didn't believe for a second that I would be so sloppy if I were actually stealing money. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, the first bit of hope I had felt in a week. Then she added something that chilled me to the bone. "This isn't actually about the money, Ava. Nobody goes to this much trouble just for a few $1,000s. I stared at her, realizing she was right. If it wasn't about the money, then Dylan wanted something much more valuable. Claire started looking into things on her own, and what she revealed was shocking. She found out that Dylan had been moving large sums of money around his own accounts recently. The transfers were fast, messy, and looked incredibly desperate. He wasn't the successful businessman he pretended to be at family gatherings. In reality, he was struggling to keep his head above water. He had made some bad investments and was trying to cover his tracks before our father, who audited the family business accounts, found out the truth. My brother was drowning in debt, and he needed a distraction to keep the spotlight off his own failures. I was that distraction. I was the cover story he needed to explain why funds were missing from the family accounts. If everyone believed I was the thief, they wouldn't look at his books. They would be too busy being angry at me to notice that he was the one actually draining the family legacy. It was a perfect, cruel plan. He was willing to destroy my entire future just to save his own skin for a few more months. The betrayal hit a new low when I decided to confront Olivia. I went to her house, hoping she would at least listen to me, but she didn't even deny believing Dylan's story. Stranger, she didn't want to know. I tried to tell her about the bank format mistake I found, but she just shook her head. She said I was just making excuses, and that I should be ashamed for trying to turn it back on him. Then she slipped and said something she shouldn't have. I even helped him organize some of the files for the presentation because he was too upset to do it alone. My jaw dropped as she realized what she had admitted. She hadn't just stood by and watched. She had actually participated in the framing of her supposed best friend. She had helped him build the lie that was currently ruining my life. My stomach dropped as I walked away from Olivia's house. The realization was heavy and painful. She didn't just believe the lie because she was fooled. She helped build it from the ground up. She was the one who knew my habits, my schedule, and the way I spoke. She probably provided the personal details Dylan needed to make his fake messages look authentic. She had betrayed years of friendship for whatever Dylan had offered her or promised her. It made me sick to think about all the times we had laughed together while they were secretly planning my downfall. This went so much deeper than just a simple family squabble. It was a coordinated effort to ruin me. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as I realized that I didn't truly know the people I had trusted most in the world. But now I had a new piece of information. I knew Olivia was involved, and that meant she was a weak link in their plan. If she helped him once, she could be forced to help me. I wasn't just going to be a victim anymore. The only person who truly stayed on my side was Noah, a friend from college who worked in tech security. When I called him, he didn't ask a single question or show a hint of doubt. "I know you, Ava. You'd never do this," he said. Within hours of looking at the files Dylan had shared online to warn people, Noah found massive inconsistencies. He looked at the metadata, the hidden data behind the files, and found that the timestamps didn't align with the story Dylan was telling. The messages from me had been created on a computer just hours before the dinner party, not months ago like Dylan claimed. Noah pointed out that the voice note had been edited professionally to remove background noise that would have given away its true origin. "Someone edited this very carefully, Ava. This isn't just a simple prank," he explained. It was clear that Dylan had used high-end tools or hired someone to make sure the evidence looked perfect to the naked eye. But they hadn't counted on someone looking at the digital fingerprints they left behind. We finally had the proof we needed. Noah's investigation led us to a much bigger player in the game, Marcus Hale. Marcus was Dylan's business partner and was well known in the industry for cutting corners and being involved in shady deals. He had a reputation for doing whatever it took to win, and he was currently under pressure to deliver results for their joint venture. It became clear that Marcus was the one who provided the resources and the professional editing to help Dylan frame me. This wasn't just emotional revenge or a sibling rivalry gone wrong. It was strategic. By framing me, they could write off the money Dylan had lost as theft, allowing them to claim insurance or explain the loss to their investors without being blamed for incompetence. I was the scapegoat for a multi-million-dollar failure. They thought they could just crush me and move on, using my theft as a tax break or a legal shield. They didn't care that they were ruining my life. To them, I was just a line item on a balance sheet that needed to be erased. With Claire and Noah's help, we uncovered the true extent of Dylan's financial records. It was much worse than I had imagined. He wasn't just struggling, he was absolutely drowning. We found evidence of high-interest loans, hidden offshore accounts, and a series of desperate trades that had gone horribly wrong. He had been gambling with the family's money, trying to hit a big win that never came. And the most shocking part was the missing amount he claimed I stole. When we dug into the actual accounting software, we discovered that the specific missing amount never actually existed in the first place. He had created a fake entry in the company books to show a surplus that wasn't there, and then claimed I took that surplus. He was trying to blame me for stealing money that he had already spent months ago on his bad debts. It was a lie built on top of another lie. He was trying to make his loss disappear by pinning it on a crime that never even happened. He was using me to balance his crooked books. The truth of why he chose me hit me slowly, and it was a bitter pill to swallow. I realized that I was the perfect target for his plan. I was the quiet, responsible one in the family. I was the person everyone trusted to handle things and do the right thing. Because I had such a good reputation, Dylan knew that if I fell, no one would think to question the evidence. People would be so shocked that they would just believe whatever they were told. They wouldn't look for a motive because they would be too busy feeling betrayed. He chose me because my fall would be the most dramatic and would provide the best cover for his own crimes. He didn't pick me by accident. He chose me carefully because he knew the family would be too heartbroken to look at the facts. He took my best qualities, my honesty and my reliability, and turned them into the weapons he used to destroy me. It was the ultimate betrayal of the bond we were supposed to have as siblings. He had weaponized my entire life against me. I spent a whole night thinking about my next move. I could go to the police, or I could try to show my parents the digital proof Noah had found. But I knew how Dylan worked. He would just find a way to lie his way out of it, or claim I had faked the proof myself. If I defended myself now, it would just be my word against his, and the family already chose his side. So I decided on a different path. Instead of defending myself, I decided to do something he would never expect. I said to myself, I'll let him lie again. I was going to give him a stage and a spotlight to tell his story one more time, but this time, I would be the one controlling the ending. I was going to let him dig his own grave by giving him exactly what he thought he wanted, a full, public confession from me. I wanted him to feel so confident and so untouchable that he wouldn't see the trap until it snapped shut around him. This time, the truth wouldn't be a whisper. It would be a roar. I started setting the stage by sending a message to Dylan. I kept it short and made sure I sounded broken and defeated. I can't live like this anymore, Dylan, I wrote. Everyone hates me, and I lost everything. I'm ready to confess to what I did, but I want to do it in front of the whole family, so I can finally move on. He responded almost immediately, his greed and ego getting the better of him. He agreed to set up another family gathering at our parents' house, thinking he was winning again. He probably thought he could use my confession to finally close the books on his fraud and be the hero who brought his wayward sister to justice. He was so excited about the idea of me admitting guilt in public that he didn't even stop to wonder why I was suddenly changing my mind. To him, it was just the final victory he needed to secure his future. He spent the next few days bragging to our parents about how he was helping me do the right thing, while I was busy preparing the real evidence. While Dylan was busy planning his victory party, Noah was working hard to finalize the technical proof. He managed to prove beyond any doubt that the voice note Dylan used was AI-generated. He found the specific software and the source clips of my voice that were used to train the program. He also found the digital breadcrumbs that showed the messages were fabricated on a computer that belonged to Marcus Hale's company. We had the evidence, the timestamps, and the names of the people who helped build the lies. We had everything we needed to show that this wasn't just a mistake, but a criminal conspiracy to frame me. However, I knew that just having the proof wasn't enough. I needed the perfect moment to reveal it, a moment where the entire family and all the important business contacts were watching. I needed to wait until Dylan was at his most arrogant, standing in front of everyone and telling his lies one more time. I was going to let him get to the very end of his story before I revealed the truth that would destroy him. The plan took an unexpected turn when Olivia showed up at my apartment, looking completely shaken and pale. "I didn't know it would go this far, Ava," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought we were just teaching you a lesson, but Dylan is talking about prison and permanent exile. He's acting like a monster." She was finally seeing the dark side of the man she had helped. She realized that she was just a tool to him, someone he would throw under the bus the second he didn't need her anymore. She was scared that the truth would come out and she would go down with him. Because she was terrified, she gave me something I didn't even know existed: remote access to the private cloud drive where Dylan kept his blueprint files. She told me the password and then left, crying and begging me not to tell Dylan she was there. I sat at my computer and opened the files, feeling a wave of cold fury. It was all there: the drafts of the fake messages, the edits they made to the voice note, and even the rehearsals Dylan had recorded of himself practicing his shocked reaction for the dinner party. Inside those files, I found the literal blueprint of the lie. There were spreadsheets detailing exactly how much money to attribute to my theft and notes on which family members would be the easiest to convince. I saw the drafts where they tried out different versions of the fake messages to see which one sounded most like me. They had even made a list of key phrases I often used so they could insert them into the AI voice notes. It was sick. He hadn't just framed me in a moment of desperation. He had practiced framing me for weeks. He had treated the destruction of my life like a project at work, checking off tasks and refining his deliverables. This wasn't a brother trying to save himself. This was a predator who had carefully stalked his prey. I watched a video of him in front of a mirror, practicing the exact way he would say, "Ava stole from me," to make sure he looked sufficiently heartbroken. It was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen, and it gave me the final piece of the puzzle I needed to end him. As Noah and I kept digging through the cloud drive Olivia provided, we found something even more damaging. It was a hidden recording of a phone call between Dylan and Marcus Hale from the night before the first dinner party. In the recording, Dylan's voice was clear and cold, with none of the sadness he showed the family. "She's the only one they'll believe did it," he told Marcus. "Our father trusts her too much. If I frame her, he'll be too busy being disappointed to look at the actual debt we've run up. It's the only way to save the firm, Marcus. She has to be the one to take the fall." My chest tightened as I listened to him talk about me like I was an object to be discarded. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was fully aware of the pain he was causing and the fact that I was completely innocent. He was sacrificing me to cover up his own greed and incompetence. The recording was the final nail in his coffin. I had his own voice admitting to the entire plan. I sat back in my chair, the sound of his cold calculations ringing in my ears. The day of the final gathering arrived. I had asked everyone to meet in the living room of our family home, the same place where Dylan had first destroyed me. I told everyone that I was there to tell the truth this time and make things right. My parents looked at me with a mix of sadness and hope, thinking I was finally going to confess and beg for their forgiveness. The room was full. My aunts, uncles, and even some of the family's business associates were there to witness my downfall. Dylan walked in a few minutes late, a smug smile on his face that he tried to hide behind a mask of concern. He looked around the room, feeling like he was the king of the world. He thought he was about to witness the final act of his perfect plan. He walked over to my parents and put a hand on their shoulders, acting like the supportive son who was helping his troubled sister. He had no idea that he was walking into a trap that I had spent the last 2 weeks building with absolute precision. I stood in the center of the room and looked at the faces of the people who had abandoned me. I felt a strange sense of calm as I began to speak. "I promised I would tell the truth today, I said, my voice steady. Then I turned to Dylan and stepped aside. But before I do, Dylan, I want you to have the floor. You've been the one telling this story for weeks. Go ahead. Tell everyone one more time what I did and how I betrayed you. Dylan looked surprised for a second, but his ego quickly took over. He stepped forward and started his performance again. He spoke even louder and was more convincing than before. He added new details about how I had allegedly hidden the money and how he had tried to help me cover it up at first because he loved me. He was so caught up in his own lie that he didn't notice the way I was looking at him. I let him finish his entire speech, letting every word hang in the air for a moment of silence. He ended with a look of fake pity toward me, thinking he had just won the game. When he finally stopped talking, I didn't cry or get angry. I just looked at him and asked one simple question. Dylan, if I stole that money on the date you said, why is the evidence you showed inconsistent with the actual bank records and the digital timestamps? The room shifted instantly. My father sat up straighter, and a few of my uncles started whispering to each other. Dylan's smile faltered for a split second before he tried to brush it off. Ava, don't start with the excuses again. We've all seen the proof, he said, his voice a little more high-pitched than usual. He tried to move the conversation along, but I didn't let him. I pointed to the large TV in the room, the same one he had used to frame me. I'm not making excuses, Dylan. I'm asking why your proof was created on Marcus Hale's office computer 3 days before you even claimed to have found out about the theft. Dylan hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as he searched for a new lie. The confidence was draining out of him, replaced by a visible, nervous sweat. I didn't wait for him to find an answer. I signaled to Noah, who was sitting in the back with a laptop. Let's look at the real evidence, I said. We began to reveal the forensic analysis on the big screen for everyone to see. We showed the fake timestamps on the messages and the way the files had been altered to look like they came from my phone. We explained how the AI voice note had been constructed using clips of my real voice. Gasps rippled across the room as the guests saw the digital fingerprints left by the people who framed me. The bank transfers were shown to be nothing more than edited images with mismatched font styles. My mother looked at me, her expression moving from anger to complete confusion. She looked back at Dylan, who was now backed against the wall, his face pale and his hands shaking. The perfect story he had built was cracking through, revealing the ugly truth underneath. People who had been laughing at his heroics were now looking at him with suspicion and dawning horror as the technical proof became undeniable. The final blow came when I played the hidden recording Noah had found. I didn't say anything as Dylan's own voice filled the room. Everyone heard him clearly as he told Marcus Hale, "She's the only one they'll believe did it." They heard him admit that I was the scapegoat and that he was framing me to hide his own massive debts. The room went deathly silent as the recording finished. There was no more room for lies, no more room for excuses. Dylan's own words had destroyed him in front of everyone. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. The sad, betrayed brother was gone, replaced by the reality of a desperate, cold-hearted fraud. I looked at my parents, who were staring at the floor in shame. My father stood up slowly, his face like stone as he looked at the son he had praised just a few weeks ago. The silence was heavier than the one at the anniversary dinner, but this time, it was a silence of absolute defeat for Dylan. He had been exposed in the most public way possible, by the very person he thought he had erased. The consequences hit fast and hard. Claire Dawson stepped forward from the back of the room and informed everyone that a formal legal action had already been filed against Dylan and Marcus Hale for corporate fraud and defamation. As if on cue, authorities arrived at the front door. They had been waiting for the signal to come in and take Dylan into custody. Marcus Hale was also implicated in the scheme, and his business was already being raided by investigators. Dylan lost control completely at that point, screaming at me and then at the police, claiming he had to do it to save the family name. No one believed him. As they took him away in handcuffs, he whispered one last time, "I had to do it. You don't understand." I watched him leave the house, the brother I once loved, now just a criminal being led to a patrol car. The room was full of people who were suddenly very interested in apologizing to me, but I didn't want to hear it. The damage to my reputation was being fixed, but the damage to my heart was another story. The truth was finally out, and I had taken back my name. But as I stood in the empty living room after everyone had left, I realized that the damage remained. My mother approached me with tears streaming down her face, trying to apologize for not believing me. My father couldn't even meet my eyes, standing in the corner with his head bowed. Olivia tried to explain herself, claiming she was confused, but I just walked away from her without a word. I didn't want their apologies because they hadn't been there when I needed them most. This was never just about clearing my name or getting revenge on Dylan. It was about something deeper. It was about seeing who the people in my life really were when things got difficult. He had tried to erase me from the family and the world because he thought I was weak and easy to manipulate. So I let him tell his story one more time, just so I could let him expose himself in front of everyone. I walked out of my parents' house and didn't look back, finally free of the lies and the people who were so quick to believe them.